She looked me straight in the eyes and whispered, "I'm married." My heart raced, but my voice came out steady, "Not to me." And in that moment, the room fell silent, but nothing between us would ever be the same. The office was quiet that evening, quieter than usual. Most of the team had already left, leaving only the soft hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic tapping of rain against the tall windows. I had been working late, though truthfully, I wasn't focusing much on the screen. My mind kept circling back to her, my boss. She wasn't just another manager. She carried herself with this graceful confidence, the kind that comes only from experience. The way she entered a room, the calm steadiness of her voice, the way her eyes lingered on details others missed, it all drew me in long before I realized what was happening. And though I tried to bury those feelings, to lock them away behind polite smiles and professional conversations, they kept slipping through the cracks. That night, she stepped into my office space with a file in hand. The warm lamplight traced the lines of her face, softening the usual firmness she carried. She set the folder down on my desk, and when our hands brushed, just lightly, almost by accident, I felt a jolt that I could no longer ignore. Without planning it, without even thinking, the words escaped me. My voice was quiet, almost trembling, but steady enough to be heard. "I can't keep pretending I don't feel something when you're around." She froze. For a moment, the air between us thickened, heavy with shock. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the file, and she looked at me with wide, searching eyes. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, she whispered the words that hit me like cold water. "I'm married." The silence that followed was unbearable. My heart pounded against my ribs, my mind screaming at me to backtrack, to apologize, to make it all disappear. But instead, I lifted my gaze, met her eyes, and replied softly, "Not to me." Her breath caught. She looked away, then back again, as though caught in a storm she hadn't prepared for. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass like an echo of my heartbeat. I could see her struggling, weighing what to say next, but no words came. That moment stretched endlessly, two people standing on the edge of something neither of us could fully name. My confession hung in the air, fragile yet impossible to take back. And though she finally stepped away, leaving the file behind, I knew nothing between us would ever return to the way it was before. The days that followed were different. Not in obvious ways, our work carried on, meetings were held, tasks were completed, but in the unspoken tension that lived between us. It was as if every word, every glance, carried a hidden weight now. She didn't scold me for what I said that night. She didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, she built walls, small but noticeable. Our conversations became shorter, stripped of the easy warmth they once had. She kept her tone professional, clipped, as though rehearsed to avoid slipping into anything personal. And yet, her eyes betrayed her. I would catch her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, her gaze softening before she quickly turned away. Once, during a team briefing, I saw her fingers fidget with a pen, something she had never done before. She was usually the picture of composure, but now, she seemed restless. Guarded. I told myself to keep my distance, to respect the line she had drawn, but it was impossible to ignore the invisible thread that seemed to tug at us in every shared space. One evening, she handed me a stack of documents. Our hands brushed, barely, just a fleeting contact, but I felt it like a spark running up my arm. She froze for the briefest second, her lips parting as though she might say something, but then she pulled back quickly, retreating into her office without a word. It was in the smallest things that her conflict showed. The way her perfume lingered in the air long after she walked by, making me pause mid-step. The way her voice softened when she said my name, even when her words were carefully professional. The way she avoided staying in the same room with me too long, as though proximity itself might betray her resolve. Outside, the weather seemed to mirror us. Heavy clouds often gathered, the sky threatening rain but holding back, just as we were holding back. I would sit at my desk, listening to the distant rumble of thunder, wondering how long two people could fight against something so undeniable. She was pulling away, yes, but in every careful step back, I felt her heart leaning forward. And the more she tried to build distance, the more I realized that what we were caught in wasn't just silence. It was a storm waiting to break. It was another late evening at the office, the kind where the world outside seemed to fade into shadows while the glow of desk lamps became the only light left. Most of the building had gone quiet, and I was just about to pack up when I noticed her door still cracked open. A soft glow spilled through, and for a moment, I hesitated. Something told me she needed to be alone, yet another part of me couldn't ignore the silent pull. I knocked gently on the frame, half expecting her to send me away. She looked up, and for the first time, her composure was gone. She sat slouched in her chair, her shoulders drawn inward, fingertips pressed to her temple as if holding herself together. A stack of papers lay untouched before her, her pen dropped carelessly to the side. "You're still here?" I asked quietly, stepping just inside. Her eyes flicked toward me, tired but not unkind. "Deadlines don't wait," she murmured, though her voice lacked the steady edge she always carried. I offered a small smile. "Neither does exhaustion." For a moment, she said nothing, then sighed, long, weary, almost defeated. She leaned back, eyes drifting toward the ceiling as though searching for answers there. "It's not just work," she admitted, her tone breaking ever so slightly. "Some days, it feels like I'm carrying more than I can manage. Balancing expectations, keeping everything together. And sometimes," she hesitated, her gaze finally returning to me. "Sometimes it feels like no one even sees the cracks." Her words landed heavier than she intended, and silence settled between us. I had never seen her this way, not polished, not untouchable, but human. Vulnerable. I stepped closer, careful, not wanting to intrude. "I see them," I said softly. Her eyes widened, just a flicker, before she looked away again. I noticed the faint tremble in her hands as she tried to gather herself. Without thinking too much, I placed my hand gently on the edge of her desk, close enough to feel the space between us shrink, close enough that she could choose to meet me there, or not. She didn't pull back. Her breathing steadied, and for the first time, her eyes met mine without the shield she usually wore. There was no command in them, no authority, just quiet weariness and a longing she couldn't hide. In that fragile stillness, I realized something: beneath her strength was a woman who wanted, desperately, to be understood. And I wanted nothing more than to be the one who understood her. The rain had been threatening all afternoon, the clouds pressing low and heavy above the city. By the time evening settled, it broke in a sudden rush, sheets of water hammering against the glass windows of the office. I was packing my things when she appeared at the doorway, arms folded, eyes flicking toward the storm outside. "You shouldn't go out in that," she said softly, her voice gentler than usual. "Wait until it calms." There was no command in her tone, no trace of the boss I knew during the day, just quiet concern. I hesitated, then set my bag down again. The truth was, I didn't want to leave. Not while she was still here. We sat across from each other in the dimly lit lounge near the lobby, the rain pounding the roof above us, thunder rolling in the distance. For a while, we spoke of nothing important, light comments about work, the weather, even an offhand remark about how the coffee machine never worked properly. Yet beneath the small talk, something unspoken hummed, alive and undeniable. At one point, lightning flashed, and the lights flickered. She startled slightly, her composure slipping just long enough for me to see it, the human fragility beneath her polished surface. Instinctively, I reached out, my hand brushing her forearm in reassurance. She didn't move away. Her skin was warm beneath my fingertips, her arm tense for only a moment before relaxing. The sound of the rain seemed to fade, the storm outside paling compared to the storm inside me. Slowly, she turned her head, her eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made the air between us tighten. The contact was so simple, yet it carried a weight I couldn't explain. Her hand shifted, resting lightly against my sleeve, as if testing the waters of something she had long denied herself. My pulse raced, but I didn't move closer. I let her choose. Thunder rumbled again, low and distant, but she didn't flinch this time. Instead, her fingers lingered, a silent confession in the way they held on to me. For that moment, we said nothing. Words would have been clumsy, too fragile for what passed between us. All I felt was the warmth of her hand on my arm, the depth in her gaze, and the quiet certainty that a line had been crossed, not recklessly, but inevitably. And when the rain finally began to ease, neither of us made any move to leave. After that night in the storm, something shifted between us. We didn't speak of what had happened, the touch, the silence, the way our eyes lingered far too long, but it lived in the space between every word we shared. It wasn't denial, exactly. More like an unspoken agreement to let the feelings breathe, quietly, in stolen moments. She began to linger after work more often, sometimes under the pretense of finishing reports, sometimes without excuse at all. And I found myself waiting, not rushing home, letting the hours stretch longer than necessary just to match her rhythm. One evening, as the office emptied and the city lights shimmered outside, she asked if I had eaten. Her tone was casual, as if the question carried no weight. But when I nodded no, she smiled, small, almost shy, and suggested we grab dinner. We sat across from each other in a quiet corner of a small restaurant. She laughed more than I had ever seen, her voice lighter, freer, unburdened by titles or responsibilities. I found myself watching the way her hair slipped forward when she leaned across the table, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. She was radiant in a way that had nothing to do with age or appearance, it was the kind of beauty that came from finally letting yourself exhale. Later, we walked slowly back toward the office to retrieve our cars, the night air cool and still damp from the earlier rain. She didn't walk beside me at first, keeping a respectable distance, but somewhere along the way her shoulder brushed mine. She didn't move away. That simple contact, shoulder against shoulder, felt like an entire conversation. My breath caught, but I stayed quiet, savoring the closeness. And when she laughed at something I said, her hand briefly touched my arm, light as a feather, yet powerful enough to make me feel unsteady. These moments began to multiply. A shared coffee in the morning, her hand brushing mine when she passed me a file, conversations that lasted long past the point of necessity. Every goodbye at the elevator lingered a fraction too long, as if both of us waited for the other to move but neither wanted to. We hadn't spoken of desire. We hadn't crossed any visible line. Yet we both knew. Something was unfolding, slow and deliberate, a pull neither of us dared name aloud. And with every step closer, the invisible lines we once thought unbreakable began to blur. It couldn't last forever, not the way we were dancing around the truth. The closeness that once felt like a secret gift began to weigh on her, I could see it. Each moment we shared, each brush of her hand against mine, each glance that lingered a second too long, seemed to leave her both fuller and emptier at once. One evening, as the office lights dimmed and the last echoes of footsteps faded down the hall, I found her standing by the window. The city below was alive with its restless rhythm, but she stood still, arms wrapped tightly around herself, as though holding her own heart in place. When she turned, her eyes met mine, and they were wet, not with tears that had fallen, but with the weight of tears she refused to let escape. "This has to stop," she whispered. The words cut sharper than I expected. My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet, waiting. Her voice trembled as she continued. "I can't keep feeling this. I can't let myself. You don't understand what it would cost me, what it would cost us both. I have a life, a reputation, a marriage, even if it's not what it used to be. If anyone knew," she broke off, shaking her head as if the thought itself was unbearable. I took a step closer, not enough to overwhelm her, but enough to close the distance of loneliness. "I'm not asking you to risk everything. I'm not asking you to burn your world down for me. All I want is honesty. All I want is, you." Her breath caught. She looked away, but not before I saw the battle written across her face. Guilt. Longing. Fear. I lifted my hand, slowly, deliberately, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. My fingertips grazed her cheek for only a second, but that second burned into me. She closed her eyes, leaning, just slightly, into the touch before pulling back as though the ground beneath her might give way. "I can't," she whispered again, her voice breaking. The silence that followed was crushing. I wanted to argue, to plead, to fight against the wall she was building, but instead, I stayed still. Because love, I realized, wasn't about claiming. It was about caring enough to let someone walk away if they needed to. So I let her retreat, even though every step she took away from me felt like losing a part of myself. And for the first time, I wondered if this was where our story would end. Time passed, though I felt each day like a weight pressing on my chest. After that night by the window, she kept her distance, emails instead of visits to my desk, quick nods in meetings instead of conversation, her laughter hidden away as though it had never belonged to me. I told myself to respect her choice. To move on. But moving on was impossible when every corner of my world reminded me of her, the faint trace of her perfume in the hallway, the empty chair across from me in the late hours we used to share. I had given her space, but the ache of her absence only deepened my certainty. What I felt wasn't a passing attraction. It was something far greater. Then, one quiet morning, everything changed. I arrived earlier than usual, and found her already there. She stood by the window again, but this time her posture was different, less guarded, less burdened. When she turned, her eyes sought mine, and I saw no walls left. Just truth. "I've been lying to myself," she said softly. Her voice didn't shake this time. Telling myself I could keep pretending my marriage still meant what it once did. Telling myself I didn't feel what I feel for you. But I can't anymore. My heart thundered. I didn't move, afraid a single step would break the fragile courage she had gathered. She crossed the space instead. Her hand reached for mine, not tentative, not accidental, but deliberate. Her fingers slipped into my palm, warm, steady, trembling only with release. "I don't know what the future looks like," she admitted, her voice quiet but strong. "But I know what I want. And it's not a life of pretending anymore. It's this. It's you." I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for weeks, and tightened my hold on her hand. For the first time, there was no guilt between us, no storm hanging overhead. Just the simple truth of two people who had found something rare and undeniable. We walked together that morning, out into the fresh light of dawn. The city was waking up, but for me, the world felt newly born. She leaned gently against my shoulder, her head resting there as though it had always belonged. No grand gestures, no dramatic declarations. Just her hand in mine, her warmth against me, and the quiet certainty that love, real love, had finally found its place. And for the first time, neither of us looked back. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who loves slow-burn romance as much as you do. And if you want more heartfelt age gap love stories, make sure to subscribe, you'll never miss the next one.